Okay, so let's
Do you see him?
wait for a second to see. Johan, I'm gonna promote him.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right, Johan's
We
here.
have Josh
Assistant.
too, so we have
Okay, good. We're ready to
everybody
go.
who's gonna be here is here.
Fantastic. All right,
Hi
then
Josh, hi Johan.
I want to make sure Johan's.
Hey, Brian, how's it
Lisa,
going?
just for the record, Nicole Eady, Common Council member, is also here. She's in with the attendees.
Okay, good. I will, we can promote her too, if she'd like. All righty, so I will call to order the regular meeting of the Ordinance Committee. It's December 17th, 2024, and 7:03. And with the committee tonight, we have Jalen Seed, Josh Goldstein, Ann Wennerstrand, Johan Lopez, and Nicole Eady is not on the committee, but she's joining us after all. And I'm
I
Lisa
just promoted
Shanahan.
her, so.
Yeah, here she is.
Yeah.
So I'm Lisa Shanahan. I'm the chair of the committee. So the first piece of business tonight is to discuss and vote on Chapter 95, which is Streets and Sidewalks, Section 95 through 9539. I apologize, everybody, for my voice. It's not, it's a little froggy. And what basically Chapter 95 is discussing is streets and sidewalks. And although it looks as though we've made a lot of changes, what we're basically doing is coordinating Chapter 95 with the new Complete Streets ordinance that was passed in November. And so we are just making sure that Chapter 95 works together with and coordinates with DPW and TMP and the roles of the complete street. So if there's anybody here who would like to, we're opening up the public hearing on this Chapter 95 now, and if there's anyone here to speak for it, they should be raising their hands, and Brian will be inviting their comments.
Okay, so just so the attendees know, we have two so far. One's raising their hand. If any attendee would like to speak, please raise your hand so we know that you would like to speak. But are going to go in the order in which people raise their hands. So the first one is going to be Diane Lauricella. Diane, you can lower your hand, unmute yourself. Please give your full name and address for the record, and welcome.
Good evening, Chair Shanahan, committee, and staff. For the record, my name is Diane Lauricella, 21 Little Fox Lane. First of all, I wanted to thank the committee for taking a look at this, of course, and I am in favor of looking at complete streets and making sure it is well written as well as coordinated with this Chapter 95. But one thing that I feel is missing from both entities, but we're here tonight looking at Chapter 95, and that is the issue of encroachments. And I'm mostly looking at enforcement of sidewalk encroachments. I know that it's well covered alongside this chapter about removal of ice and snow. But what isn't clear is the removal of vehicles and trucks. And that has been a pervasive problem all over the city. Members of, like myself, I'm a member of Sustainable Streets. I do not know if they're going to speak tonight, but I'm speaking as an individual. But I do know that many have documented cars and trucks on our sidewalks. And so the responsibility, as you're laying out in 95.2, the execution of orders, and 95.3, removal of obstructions and nuisances, I think I would like you to consider making sure that there is a little more detail on the word cars as an obstruction, either in the definition, cars and trucks. For instance, in 95.3, under removal of obstruction and nuisance, it says, in quotes, to the extent reasonably possible. Now, I would like to see towing take place, but first with a warning system for the first offense, and then towing. It also does not mention anywhere in this particular chapter the relationship to the police and whether it is the police that must put together a written ticket or if you should decide a warning. So I'm hoping that you will discuss what I've just observed, because I don't see the enforcement. When you say in 95-2B, that the Council for the Design, Construction, and Maintenance like to see the word, add the word, and enforcement in addition to maintenance and repair. The director in item C, the director is hereby authorized. Well, we'd like to see timely completion of enforcement, not just maintenance, repair, design, and construction. So I guess I would add, if possible, an item D in 95-2 to include the police that they shall assist, and planning and zoning enforcement officers shall assist the director of public works. Lastly, I wanted to thank you for making sure that this item is gender neutral, as little by little we are whacking away at gender biased language. So I thank you for that. I would like really for you to consider what I've said, because it is not obvious to those who continue to park cars and trucks on our sidewalks. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane. Are there any other commenters?
Anybody else who is an attendee that would like to speak, please raise your hand right now if you'd like to speak about Chapter 95, the matter that's up for public hearing. Nobody.
Alrighty, so seeing none, I'm going to close public comment for the public hearing, and then we'll open up the discussion with the committee. Just one point of order, just for all of the good suggestions by Ms. Loricella. One of the things that we're doing right now is we're moving this on to Common Council. So these would be substantive changes and would have to have us go back through the process. So at this time, we can't really go through a lot of those comments and make those changes at this time, because we would have to work with DPW, et cetera. At this time, what we really want to do is put Chapter 95 in a place where it's properly coordinated with complete streets. So I just wanted to give Ms. Loricella a little bit of a feedback on that. So we're not ignoring her comments. It's just that it's not timely for this process. Is there anybody else on our committee who has anything to say before we consider a motion to take it to Common Council? Seeing no comments, I'd entertain a motion to take Chapter 95, Streets and Sidewalks, to Common Council. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. All in favor of moving this item to Common Council, raise their hands. That's 5 votes for. So that would be great. Thank you. So that's the end of that part. We can open up the next part, which is public participation. Is there anybody here to speak for for public participation?
Checking right now, hold on. If anyone would like to speak on any of the remaining items, any of the attendees would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Diane Loricella. Diane, I'm going to promote you again. Unmute yourself, lower your hand, full name and address for the record, and welcome back.
Thank you. Since I was stepping away from my phone, I thought I would just speak tonight on another item later on, having to do with the renaming of the Commission on the Status of Women. Mayor Bill Collins was the mayor who initiated and created this commission, and depending upon who succeeded him, they, especially under Mayor Esposito, kind of let it die on the vine by not appointing people. One of the promises, just for background on this very briefly, is that my support of the current mayor in 2013 was based upon his promise to reactivate that commission, which had been sleeping on the shelf. This did not occur for at least 10 years, and I was happy that it did. But I wanted just to say this, is that I'm not in any way, because times change, I am not in any way opposed to changing the name of this commission. However, I want to be assured that I know this is going to go to public hearing, I assume. This is just for discussion, but I decided I would plant this seed in the commission, in the council people's heads, and that is, I want to be assured that women's concerns and the role women play in our city is not going to become subservient to other gender issues. I want to make sure those other gender issues are very important too, but there are still some things in our city, in our administration, and the way we meet out appointments, that is not gender equity, embracing gender equity. As an example, our Shellfish Commission has 0 women. Our Harbor Commission has 1 token woman, and our Board of Estimate and Taxation again has 1 woman. And I will be saying often that since our census, the recent census stated that women comprise of 51% of the population in Norwalk, I would like to see us strive to fill our boards, commissions, and agencies with strive for 50% at least. And that has not happened. So I just wanted to plant that seed as we get started, because I know many of you will say that you care about the issue of women's equity. And I hope you do. But when I see what we've done in action, I just am concerned. And I have an open complaint that occurred with me with the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women related to a committee that I was on, and it was never properly handled. So I want to make sure women's role, because it's not easy being a woman that speaks up or disagrees, even in 2024. This is my experience in my city, and I'm not alone for women like me. So I thank you for letting me speak, and I look forward to the day when we have the public hearing. So I hope that you will maybe apportion the amount of time spent on women as well as other gender equity issues. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Dan.
Is there anybody else who would like to make public comment this evening?
Any other attendees that would like to speak on any of the matters that are on the agenda for tonight? If you'd like to raise your hand now. If you do not want to speak, just don't raise your hand. And if we don't see any hands raised in the next couple of moments, we will shut down the public comment for this section, as no one else wants to speak.
Nobody else? Okay.
No hands raised.
Great. We'll close public participation and now we'll move to acceptance of the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes from November 19th, 2024? Thank you, Jalen. Does anybody have any comments, changes, suggestions? Seeing none, can we vote on accepting the minutes as filed? All in favor? That's all 5 of us. Great. So the next thing I'd like to do is entertain a motion to reorder the new business. I'd like to deal with reapportionment at the end because Jalen has to excuse himself. So what I'd like to do is reorder it to say that we'll cover vape, then go to this Commission on the Status of Women, and then discuss reapportionment. So can I have a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. So all in favor of realigning the agenda? Thank you. We're all in favor of that. So we'll move on to discussing the new vape ordinance, and I'm going to turn this portion of the meeting over to Brian, Johan, and Chief Walsh. I'm sorry, Chief. All righty. So I guess I'll just leave it to you, Brian, to start it, you and Johan to
Sure.
begin.
So an issue was raised about vaping in the city of Norwalk. An issue that involves multi-layered issue. One is businesses that are improperly selling them. Other issues involve illegal sale of products that are dangerous to the public. This matter was raised by a few people with differing perspectives, some of them from the planning and zoning perspective, others from criminal and law enforcement. And so Chief Walsh was one of those who raised this issue. When we started to look at the issue that was raised, we took a look at a prior ordinance that had been passed concerning massage parlor establishments in Norwalk, where we were facing similar issues, probably about a little bit less than a decade ago. And so the vape ordinance is obviously focused on vaping. but the structure, the format that you'll see is very similar to the massage parlor ordinance that we had previously, which has a component of licensing and maintaining the standards that are being asked of those businesses that are doing it legally and correctly, so that they can keep on getting their licenses back, and will also assist in making the city's job easier in enforcing these businesses that are properly selling it as opposed to improperly selling vaping products, whether they're illegal in terms of what they're selling or they're illegally selling it because they shouldn't be selling it because they don't have the proper licensing. So that kind of is the structure of that's the structure for this ordinance. Again, it's a first draft. No one's really seen it. And so it was more of an introduction tonight for everyone to have a look at it and collect their thoughts on it.
And Chief, if you would just be so kind as to, give a little bit of a overview of the concerns that you might have about, what the community is suffering, what you're seeing out there in the field, and why you feel this is really an important thing for us to undertake.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, since 2021 and the legalization of adult use cannabis, not only Norwalk, but Southwestern Connecticut and most cities and towns in Connecticut have seen a proliferation of smoke shops and vape shops and other small retail stores that are now selling THC products. With the legalization of adult use cannabis, it's developed a mindset that marijuana is legal for all. And as we all know, it is not. And it's right now, currently in Norwalk, we have 3 established adult use cannabis stores where people can go and buy it over the age of 21. But what we have seen since 2021 with these vape shops and smoke shops is illegal sales of marijuana over the counter and illegal sale of high THC products, which are extremely harmful. Besides, they're more dangerous than regular vaping. Part of this is, shall I say, black market sales undercuts the legalized sales because it's you can get more quantities at a cheaper price. There was just an article recently on that legal cannabis sales in the state of Connecticut are dropping. And there could be a correlation between, the illegal black market sales because of the cheaper price and the higher quantity. And right now, we still have ongoing investigations, but in the past 3 years, we've probably conducted over 14 to 16 investigations where the undercover investigators have successfully walked into these smoke shops in the city of Norwalk, purchased marijuana over the counter, and walked out, where they secure search and arrest warrants and go back and they arrest the parties. Some of these cases, we've recovered pounds of marijuana, thousands of dollars of cash of ill-gotten gains from the proceeds of these marijuana sales. Recently, we've begun to take the State of Department Consumer Protection, whom has assisted us in identifying the illegal THC products, which are normally packaged to look like candy and other mainstream candy like Skittles or Snickers bars to disguise their high THC potency, which is extremely dangerous to youth and teenagers. So in most cases, what we're doing is we're arresting the clerks and the shop owners for illegal sales of marijuana, possession of marijuana, and which are very minor misdemeanor crimes currently in the state of Connecticut. And we didn't have the civil or process to follow through at the state level or the local level to start going after or penalizing ownership for these continued sales. There has been some establishments that we've actually executed search warrants on 3 or 4 times on the same store. So just to make a comparison, in the state of Connecticut, Department of Consumer Protection governs liquor sales. So if we go into a restaurant or a bar and we catch 20 kids underage on a weekend, we could refer that permittee to the state of Connecticut. And the state of Connecticut will follow up and either instill fines in a progressive manner, or if it gets worse enough after several violations, close the establishment or close the shop down for several days, which has a punitive measure in their sales. And those type of measures usually correct it. And we found that We lacked that kind of same follow through on the vape shops. So discussions were started within the city and corporation council to possibly get an ordinance that created follow through, where the city could give that shop owner due process through a hearing process and make a decision that, you know, what they're doing is not good for public safety and possibly take ramifications of closure and withdrawing their license. And now that starts with a registration process of registering these stores and knowing what's going on if they're selling THC products, and that further arrest or any arrest will be followed up by the city of Norwalk, and punishment will be, you know, progressively followed out. And I think that would be the most effective way of deterring that. As you know, we already had the ordinance which prevents new shops from opening a mile away from existing shops, which has been effective, but we still have many, shall I say, mom and pop grocery stores, small gas stations that are selling these products over the counter. And like to this day, I'm getting updated this week on current investigation. So it's still ongoing, and I believe any ordinance will be effective in deterring future activity.
It's a multi-layered approach when you throw a net down, throw a couple nets down. You know, if you throw a net down with the planning and zoning regulations that the chief was referring to, about the mile radius between these shops, people are violating that. Whether they know it or not, they're violating it. And there's only so much that P&Z can do when we don't know all the entities that are doing this. And if we have a licensing program, then we're going to know the people that should be selling it. Makes it easier so that if someone's selling it and they're not on the list, then we know they're either doing it, that they're not doing it properly. So having a net being thrown down from different directions, I think just catches more of the people that are doing it improperly. Planning and zoning regulations are doing a good job. We're just trying to assist them and also assist the police and the law in making sure that that this stuff is monitored, regulated properly, and that people that are not playing by the rules and making our city unsafe should be stopped from selling this stuff.
Josh, you have a comment or question?
I just had a quick question on something Chief Walsh said, and I kind of wanted to, Chief Walsh, just help shed a light, because I don't want to say something that's inaccurate. I thought one of the issues that happens, especially with these shops that do not sell legal marijuana, is that there's also a risk that that marijuana contains other substances in the marijuana. So fentanyl, what have you. If a shop is found to have sold marijuana that is laced with something else that's perhaps more potent or a different illegal drug, could that shop owner, the clerk, or the the owner of the store be arrested for a more serious charge than the misdemeanors than you talked about a moment ago?
Yes, the three current legal shops in Norwalk sell regulated marijuana that is
Right.
approved under the state of Connecticut guidelines. So the rest of these shops that are legally selling in the criminal investigations that we have conducted, it's unregulated black market weed that used to be sold on the streets 10, 15 years ago, which comes from unknown sources. The further penalty that we could add, so if they are adding or cutting it with another additive, the only charge that we could do as a supplement charge is possession of that. So if it's possession of fentanyl, it's possession of marijuana and possession of opioid product.
So not even something like
Okay.
intent to distribute or something along those lines?
Yes. So
Okay.
if we could prove or find through evidence and the lab results show that the marijuana that they are has an additive, which is also illegal, we can add a charge.
Okay, I just wanted to get my head straight on that. Thank you.
And just again, like, so we have the P&Z regulation that says you can't sell it within a mile radius of anybody. This is and primarily the primary thing that I see here in this ordinance is the licensing requirement, which puts the city on notice of all these people that are selling it. And you can tell if you're within a mile. So again, it assists planning and zoning. It assists the police by having this licensing. I think
Right.
that's the biggest part of this. Obviously, there's a due process
Absolutely.
component, but we're trying to make it easier for P&Z and police to monitor this stuff.
Great. And now I'm gonna open it up to Johan. He's basically going to be holding the pen on this ordinance, and as I think we're like in our second draft. So Johan, if you want to make any comments about the ordinance itself or broader comments.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So this is personal to me because I know I think some of you know I lost my younger cousin a couple of months ago to marijuana laced with fentanyl. He died 3 days after his 27th birthday. And so I look at this not only from economics point of view, meaning that, I recognize that for a consumer, the economic driving force is price sensitivity, right? The fact that they can actually get this or have accessibility to a product for a lower price is appealing. And so for the business, obviously they don't have to pay the licensing costs, they don't have to pay tax and that sort of things. So they fill in this gap between the supply and demand that obviously is profitable. And so when I think about this, I do look at this as like a predatory business model because it's actually putting the public's health at risk, specifically young people. And so that's one of my major concerns. And so I think that this ordinance is essentially a guideline to be able to provide licensing, to monitor the way these retailers operate and how the salespeople operate that work on their behalf. So it is an iterative process. It's a working document. We're going to keep going through it, but I think that we're off to a pretty good start. Thanks a lot to the chief, the Norwalk Health Department, and it's definitely a combined effort because it's multidimensional, right? It's just not economic. It's not health. It's also all these things. So yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to say real quick.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa.
Sure. Josh, you've got your hand back up.
The only thing I realize this, we are in early days here. There's a lot to go through. I just wanted to get a sense of, and I could sort of tell, but this ordinance is based off, I think, another ordinance in our city code regarding regulation of alcohol and liquor and those who sell that, right? I mean, that's the basic thematic process here.
Actually, massage parlor.
Massage parlor. I'm sorry, you're right. It's not liquor, it's massage parlor. And just I don't know who can walk through for the shops that are currently available, that currently sell these products. Like, what is going to be the process by which like they have to essentially get signed up and get licensed? And especially for a shop that is already exists. I don't know if anyone could sort of walk through that or sort of the experience with massage parlors in mind. Like, how do you get everyone online when like these businesses already exist?
Brian, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think what we're going to do is this is going to be a requirement for all vape shops moving forward, right? If you're going to sell vape, you're going to have to have a license to do so.
My understanding is there's discussion with the planning and zoning people to amend their regulations because right now it says you're considered a vape shop, I think, if it's 25% of your inventory, which is, it's very difficult to figure out for anybody who goes in there, expert or not, to figure out if your inventory, your store is 25% or not. And obviously there's no finalized conversations with them, but the hope and goal is that if you're selling any kind of product like this, that you're going to be considered a vape shop for these purposes, and that would require licensing. And then that becomes an economic decision for those businesses. Do they want to pay the licensing and keep that part of their business open, or do they just want to forego that and avoid the licensing? Again, you have stores that do this, that's their entire business. That's fine. You have to do the licensing. Other people that it's only a small part of their business, they might decide that they don't want to have these inspections. They don't want to do the licensing requirements. The ordinance does discuss in pretty good detail the types of questions and form. We don't have the forms yet, but the types of questions and information you're going to have to provide if you want to sell this stuff in the city. We're going to have to work on the forms, but I think we can follow some of the things that we had in the massage parlor forms that were used for licensing.
Did that answer your question, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be more discussion that needs to be had on making sure that we, it's not only the communication effort, but also I think it's important that existing businesses get licensed. It's not just going forward.
Correct.
Because of the number of businesses in this city that currently do this. And I know Chief Walsh, I know I've spoken with members of the Newark Police Department before who have expressed frustration with this issue. So I also just, for my own record, just to say to Johan, Brian, Chief Walsh, for working on this and putting this ordinance forward, I think it's a huge step. And so I'm very glad and grateful, and and hope we can, we'll get this across the finish line.
And again, just so everyone's clear, this ordinance is talking about licensing and due process if people have violated this ordinance. The planning and zoning regulations are the ones that are going to essentially control how many of these things can exist in the area. Now, obviously, if a planning and zoning regulation is amended, those that are already in business that are there legally and doing something legally will be grandfathered in.
Right.
What we're planning to do is not as extreme as what, for example, I believe Westport has proposed, which is they're trying to ban any new shops from coming in.
I think they
We're not trying to
did ban any new
from
shops
coming
from coming in.
Yeah, we're trying to say there's a specific amount of space in the regulations that you can do, and outside of that, you're in violation. And if you're in violation, you're doing it illegally. And if you're here legally, all we're asking you to do is be subject to licensing, which requires inspection and monitoring to make sure that you're doing things on the up and up.
And then there's consequences if you're not. So
Correct.
that's the important part.
And that kind of answers the question. That answers one of the requests from the chief about it just can't be criminal in nature. There has to be a financial threat, i.e., we're going to fine you if you're not playing by the rules, and if you do it enough, then we're going to suspend the ability of you to sell this stuff, because the municipality has power under 7-148 to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizenry. And if you're going to be doing stuff that is affecting the health of the citizenry, then we can do stuff to stop you from selling that stuff. Whether you choose to continue to do it illegally is something that the police will have to deal with. But we're trying to make it easier on P&Z and the police to monitor and enforce these things in the city.
Exactly. Josh, if you're satisfied with that answer, then I'm going to move to Jalen, who's had his hand up for a little while. So Jalen, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, comment. I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, like Brian said, we have to protect the citizens of the city. This is something that if you go into a courthouse almost any day, you're gonna hear somebody pretty much taking a exhilarated rehabilitation on a charge like this because they were selling illegal weed. And they just kind of slap on the wrist, and then you kind of see the same people getting arrested all the time. So I mean, this is something that is extremely needed. But I also want to thank Newark Police Department. I mean, they've been kind of working on this for a long time. I know they're part of the organization with Newark Partnership and SMART, talking about the dangers of vaping before the legalization of weed for years now. And now with this, it's a new challenge that they were kind of at the forefront. And I remember them talking about when the legalization was kind of process was happening. So really want to thank the Newark PD for being ahead of this and really working for the people in Newark and all the hard work that they do. So just want to thank that and full support on this moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Jalen.
And Lisa, real quick, again, this is not an attack on people that want to consume marijuana. Again, as the chief noted, we have businesses that are legal and are being regulated by the state right now that are selling these products in our city. So you can go there to get them. And that's the place that you should go to get this type of the marijuana or cannabis or those type of related products. That's where you should go to get this stuff. Again, we're not attacking these places. We're trying to make sure that people that are selling these things are doing so safely so that we don't have other tragedies.
Yes. Johan, you have further comments?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, if it helps, I mean, I could kind of somewhat summarize some of the articles on screen, or we can leave it to a different, we can kind of leave it to a meeting in the future.
Johan,
Yeah.
if you want, the next time we have this on the agenda, I'm assuming in January, if you want to send me the articles, I can attach them as backup so people have their chance to review them at their pleasure.
Perfect.
Yep.
Excellent. That works.
So what we'll do, we know that we're going to be turning one more draft. Johan and I think with Brian have gone through 2 or 3 drafts of this. And there's just a couple more specific things that we need to do as far as internally within the city, thinking about who's going to be holding the license requirements and things like that. But we're pretty hopeful that we'll have another meeting early in January, and then at our January meeting, that would be a great time, Johan, for you to go through each of the sections in some detail, because we'll have I think by that point, we'll have it pretty well worked out.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that offer. Any other comments before we move forward? So we really encourage all of our committee members to take a review of what we've done so far. We do know that there's internal discussions in the cities, as we said, about who's going to be holding, some of the licensing work to be done. But ultimately, we will have a second draft in January, and hopefully everybody will comment. Deanna, I saw you came off. Oh, there you are. I was like, where'd you, you started over there and now you're up here. Would you like to make a further comment before we close this discussion?
Sure. Yes, thank you. So thank you to Chairperson Shanahan, Council Member Lopez, and to the Ordinance Committee members for your work to elevate this issue and your commitment to protecting the safety and well-being of the community. As you all know, this is a complex issue that is greater than Norwalk and something that many different communities throughout the state are grappling with. I just also wanted to thank Chief Walsh and the police department for the phenomenal work that they have been doing in law enforcement to address this. And, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Norwalk Health Department and the Norwalk Board of Health, we look forward to further engagement with you on this ordinance and on how best we can tackle this issue as a community. Thank you.
We'll see you the first week of January.
I'll be there.
Thank you to Chief Walsh and Deanna for attending the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time at nighttime. I hate taking up more of your time than necessary, but we really appreciate it. Great. So we'll close the conversation about vape shops right now, and we'll thank the chief and Deanna for coming. And now we'll turn our conversation to the chapter 115, which is Commission on the Status of Women. And we have two guests this evening, Christina Testa Buzzy. Am I pronouncing your name right? I hope. And then Shannon O'Toole is also here. Gia Durko.
Yep.
There you. I'm seeing you, like people are moving on the screen for me. So if the two of you, I'm going to turn over this discussion, the two of you, this is an ordinance that has been brought to our attention by the Commission of Women on the Status of Women, and they have some slides to share.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
If you want to, you're all set.
Mhm.
Great. So thank you, everybody. Happy to be here. Christina Testabuzzi, as Lisa said, and my colleague and co-vice chair Shannon O'Toole Giandurco is joining me as moral support and backup. So just a few quick slides to walk you through how we got to this point. You can go to the next slide. Thank you, Brian. So just some background. The commission was established in 1986 and on and off, starts and stops between then and in 2021 was reconstituted. And there's currently 9 current active commissioners. And we are actively recruiting for the 2 remaining seats for the commission. Some select accomplishments over the last 3 years. We actually have done a lot of community outreach to identify and solidify priorities through surveying at public events, some name recognition, letting folks know that we're back, that we're kind of re-engaged in the community. It is a bipartisan, diverse group of individuals that serve as the commissioners, and we take pride in that. We did do and have very actively engaged in a lot of active research and work to increase diverse representation on our commission, but also others, and did a variety of workshops presented to both the mayor and other Norwalk staff and employees that work with the commissions through our liaison, Michelle Wood Matthews, to actually talk about ways to increase diversity among all the commissions, including and specifically gender, but obviously diversity in a broad scope was something we were open to and is obviously a good partner in that conversation. And part of the work that we did was work with Michelle and the team in City Hall to have the QR code put on the commission page where individuals can scan it and then apply. So there was, we really wanted to make sure there was an open application to try to increase diversity and particular gender equity on all the commissions. We also worked with some advocacy issues around the menstrual equity law. We worked with the youth development organization out of Brian McMahon and the Center for Global Studies, also provided support for HB 6569 to abolish child marriage. And we also, again, these are just some select activities because I think it's important that you see the scope of the work that we've been doing. We also established an impact award for the city in 2023, in which we had 16 applications. We identified one adult and one youth that whose work and commitment in the community reflected our mission and vision that we have set for the commission. So we're looking to establish that again. I'm drawing a blank on the date. I'm so sorry, but right after the new year, there'll be a lot of PR around nominations. For that, we had a very research-driven rubric to identify and select our winner. So a lot of integrity goes into a lot of this work. So next slide. So this year, 24, 25, I've worked in academia most of my life, so that tends to be the year that I approach things. But that is also where we kind of re-engaged. Two committees, policy advocacy, and then community outreach and civil engagement are the two committees that all of our commissioners are currently serve on. And our priorities for this coming year, which we identified based on previous community feedback and the survey of our commissioners, childcare, women's sports equity, which I want to give a nod to the Department of Parks and Rec and all the recreation programs. They've actually sought us out to provide support and engagement for increasing women's sports in the city, youth sports in particular, as well as adults. So we're excited about that. In fact, we had a recent adjustment to middle school soccer teams, which didn't quite allow for a full opportunity for girls and boys to be on the field. And so we did advocate for that. And middle school sports folks worked with us through public schools. And so it was a collaborative effort to address that and create those opportunities. So we're excited about that. Also engaging, as I've spoken to, women and other marginalized gender identities to pursue positions on the commission. Part of this is our intent and outreach to folks to let them know that there are seats on commissions available. At every meeting, we go over all the openings that are available. And then lastly, a priority of voting awareness. Next slide. So all that to be said, we've been a busy group, and actually in 2022, we did amend our bylaws. And we did this based on a variety of research and contemporary language that were very important in this space. And so we look to amend primarily our purpose. And I would call attention to, where am I? The first one, really. I'm not going to read it to you, but you'll see that we do review the progress and assist in the elimination of gender-based discrimination and to help, and this is where we actually took this language for our impact award, where we look to identify and improve the status of women, girls, and other marginalized gender identities, such as transgendered people and gender nonconforming people in the city of Norwalk. The commission will consider multiple intersecting forms of discrimination that can affect women, girls, and other marginalized identities. Hence, next slide. We do want to and ask for the consideration to change our name from the Commission on the Status of Women I created quite a while ago to the NAWA Commission on Gender Equity. Short and sweet.
Great.
And I'll entertain any questions from the committee, I think, right, Lisa? That's allowable.
That is absolutely what I was going to say next, which is thank you very much for setting the parameters of the conversation and giving us a sense of what you guys have been up to, which is fantastic. So it's great for those of us who missed some of the headlines. These are great headlines that you guys have. So I'll open up the conversation to the committee if people have questions. And I know that you had something that you wanted to ask about. Oops, wait, you're still muted, I believe.
I'm getting used to a new system here. I first wanted to say thank you very much for the presentation and for the work you're doing in energizing this committee, which was dormant for so long. And I wanted to commend you for what you're doing and also just say that I'm very supportive of the change of the name of the commission. I think trans females are in particular extremely vulnerable population. And I think anything that creates more inclusivity is good. So I really appreciate that. I also was wondering, just one point of language, that you might want to look at the language of gender non-conforming versus gender diverse, which is sort of a little bit more of an inclusive terminology. So happy to say a little bit more, but it's just a little bit of a language point
Mhm.
that you might want to take into consideration.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate
Thanks.
that. And as I mentioned in my notes, we sort of did the amendment to the bylaws in 2022, 2 years
Right.
later, right? It's so
Things
that would-
evolve.
exactly. So of course that would require going back to our bylaws, which I appreciate that. I'm not saying we can't do that, but that's we would need to do that through the process. But I'm not sure. And to your point, I appreciate your support. I'm not sure that would affect a name change, but I do appreciate the point about language. We did spend a great deal of conversation on that, as reflected in our minutes. If anyone is interested.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
you do have that language, you have suggested that we make that change of that language throughout the ordinance. So if that's not the right language, this would be the time to make sure that we have it pinpointed to exactly what should be done. So even if your charter is different, the ordinance at least should
Mhm.
with the new, with the best.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so that would be something
Right.
we can have conversations about, because we shouldn't look backwards if there's new ways that people prefer to be described as.
If you
Thank-
guys want to, make any revisions or edits based on Anne's comments, I'm happy to work with you and Anne to get a more updated document ready before the next time it comes on.
Got it. And the next time it comes on, this is just a process question. The next time
Yep.
it comes up would be in a public hearing. Is that?
no.
No, it would come back to a regular meeting. If it comes back in January, it'd come back on January 21st would be our regular meeting in the ordinance committee. And at that point, if it was ready, we could send it to public hearing, and that would be a month later in February. And if it went to public hearing in February and it was approved at the February meeting, it would be sent to council, and that would be the end of February. So under the fastest timeline, it would be the end of February that it would be, the ordinance would be approved and sent to, approved by both ordinance committee and council.
The alternative would be to review the edits that we've already proposed without that change in language. Or is,
Well,
just
we
trying to
could,
understand the process.
We
Yeah,
can,
so
Christina, we can work with, Ann and I can work with you and your commission on making any additional revisions that you need prior to bringing this back in January. So that it's updated with the correct language, the most
Okay.
inclusive language that you want. And when we bring it back, that doesn't stop it at that meeting from being considered to go to public hearing. It would just, we would need to have the language done in advance of the meeting so that
Mhm.
the updated language could be there when we're submitting the agenda.
Got it. So it doesn't necessarily push it out another month because it still had to come to January,
No,
to the meeting in January.
no, we can make amendments in
Okay.
between this meeting and the next meeting, as long
Okay.
as we have those
Okay.
edits done and I can submit it by that
Thank
time.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
and if you have to turn it around in your commission one more time, we can bring it in February, whatever timeframe that's comfortable.
We've-
for you.
we've
So if you're not
been-
ready-
Yeah, through a variety of leadership changes on both, I think, entities. This is actually something that sort of got stalled for a good chunk of time. So that's why we're excited to move it forward, obviously following process and
Yeah.
protocols. So
Yeah, we'll
thank-
move on your time frame, but we definitely want to make sure that the language is the most forward-thinking as it should be. So,
And
yeah,
we actually meet before, we have another meeting in between when you guys would meet again, so we'll work with Brian to get the language up, set, we'll approve it at ours, and then it can come back to you guys.
Great.
that's great.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we'll
Shannon.
work on your time frame. So just let us know.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Jalen has his
Perfect.
hand raised.
Yeah, Jalen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jalen, I was gonna say, Jalen, has a question.
I had a question, and I definitely support this, but I heard Ms. Loricella's comments and concerns about women's issues getting their attention, and not being overcast with like other issues, and not saying that one is more important than the other. But I know like Ms. Loricella and other women around the city have been advocates for this commission for decades. So I definitely heard her concerns, and I just want to see how we can make sure that her concerns are met and not overlooked.
That's fair, Jalen. We actually, I know we have actually responded to some of those concerns raised and appreciate that and take all those thoughts into consideration, but thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Christina and Shannon? Seeing none. All right. So, well, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you,
And
Christina and
it sounds
Shannon.
like we've
Yes.
got a roadmap
Yeah.
for the future.
Great.
Yep,
So it's all
great.
good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
all. Have a
everybody.
great night. Have a great
Thanks.
holiday.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
So now we're going to excuse Jalen and we'll move to the reapportionment. So Jalen, if I don't see you, have a great holiday season and
Happy
Um,
holidays,
Happy
Jalen.
holidays.
well,
Good
Happy
New
night.
Year.
holidays.
take care. All right, now it's time for us to discuss and vote on section 9-32 entitled Districts Established Concerning the Reapportionment of Common Council Voting Districts.
Yeah, we
And
still have 4 members, so we still have a quorum. just
yes,
so
so
we're
we still
clear.
have a quorum. We're losing people, but we have the 4 we need. And Diana, thank you so much for coming. And Stuart, thank you so much for coming. We have both the Democratic and Republican registrars, which is super helpful. And Stuart, thank you very much for helping us get this language attuned to where it needs to be for purposes of describing the districts. And Diana, I think that you've also been helpful in fly specking all of that. So is there, oops, there we go. Brian, do you want to just give us
Yeah,
a
so
presentation about this?
after obviously after the original section 9, I think it was 26 through 31 was approved, we then added in 9-32 districts established to try and give a physical description of the boundaries of each of the districts. It also provided operative effect dates and effective dates and district boundaries and interim vacancies and things of that nature. But really the most important thing was the description of each of the districts along with a map. The map is not changed because the map can only go so far in terms of what it's showing. It's more of a, a general overlay of what's being described here. Stuart raised some issues after this was approved by council. So based on his initial comments, I went back and ensured that all of the spellings of the roadways and waterways and things of that nature were properly spelled. And then Stuart, who has more experience in this kind of meets and bounds stuff than I do from his prior experience, went and found additional language that he felt was appropriate, such as, you see thence a lot and things like that. More importantly, he has a very good understanding of the boundaries and the geography of our city. And so he added in some other language, which you can see here, which shows up in red line format to make sure that we're giving the most accurate description of each of the districts. Tonight, we're not voting on anything. Just so everyone's aware, we're going to be having a special meeting of the Ordinance Committee in early January to finalize this language and send it to public hearing at our regular meeting in January, to then hopefully send this to council and have it approved by the end of January, so that Diana and Stuart have this about a month before the primary season starts. Whether there's primaries or not, we want to give them as much time as possible, which is why we're having this special meeting. So these are the proposed changes that I put together and then included in what Stuart recommended as well. And you can see that here in the red line.
I mean, are we voting to take it to public hearing on that special date? I think we do have to
No,
vote.
we don't need to, we're not gonna have a public hearing until January 21.
Oh,
So we're having a special meeting to give everyone additional time we could do one of two things. We can have a special meeting in January, or we can say this language is sufficient and send it to public hearing at our meeting on January 21, thereby bypassing the special meeting.
oh, I was confused because I thought that we had to send this to a public hearing, then to send it to council, so the
We
council.
do. We do. So we have that was the purpose of the special meeting, was to have another meeting and then to send it to public hearing on January 21, which is our regular meeting.
Okay, is there any
I-
reason why we shouldn't vote for it to go to public hearing now for the January, so we can avoid that extra meeting?
We certainly can if that's what everyone wants.
Okay, for some
Fine with
reason,
me.
yeah, I thought we had to get it to council by the second week in January. We don't.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that takes the pressure off for January because getting in.
Yeah, so just so everyone's aware, the reason why we were trying to do the special meeting was we didn't feel we had enough time based on the time that Stuart raised the issues until our meeting on December 17th. We didn't know if we had enough time to get these changes done so that Diana and Stuart would feel comfortable with it. And so the thought was to bring this back tonight to show everyone what the proposed changes were so people could digest it, and then come back for a special meeting, giving everyone, including Diana and Stuart, a little bit more time to think about it. and to bring the best version possible to that meeting, to then send it to public hearing on January 21 at our meeting, our regular meeting, and then to send it to council and give Stuart and Diana at least a month. And to Diana's credit, Stuart's obviously been very helpful as well, but Diana hasn't even started her job yet, and she's been helping us out tremendously as well. So I just like to say thank you to her because she's taking time before she even starts her job to try and make sure we get this right.
So maybe we should hear from Stuart and Diana as to whether or not you all need more time to fly spec what we're looking at right now to make sure that it's 100% right. But if there were going to be changes between now, if we were to send it to public hearing on January 21st and we had tiny little fixes we had to make, would you consider those to be substantive, Brian, or would
No.
they be? So
Well, I
we
mean, I want to see what the changes were, but if the changes were not significant, then they would not be substantive, and therefore we could send it to a public hearing without having to have a second public hearing. And quite honestly, if we made changes between now and that public hearing, as long as the public hearing has that changed language at the time of the public hearing, I think we'd be all right. But that being said, I would feel more comfortable having a public hearing after we don't have any significant changes.
Yeah. So Stuart and Diana, can you give us a comment about whether you think it's going to be necessary for us to have a short meeting in early January, or is this something that you feel that, between now and January 21st, you can really take a hard look at this and make sure that it's 100% right?
I think the quick answer is that if there's little to no changes, extremely minor changes or no changes, then we could bypass the special meeting. If there's, I'd like to see what those changes were. If there's anything more than that, I think the special meeting might be necessary.
I feel fairly comfortable. Stuart and I, both spoke yesterday and today. And looking at the changes that I see, I definitely feel comfortable moving forward. But I'll just defer to Stuart if he, feels, it's necessary, then of course, I'm open to that as well.
Well, I spent a good deal of time when I was out of town on this and, making those little red changes. I'm comfortable now that it follows the map to the point where I can determine which houses are in which districts, subject to the usual problems with the taxing district lines and things that run through the middle of stuff. But we should have enough time. I know I can do it with a proper table for all the addresses and things. I'm a little concerned about the state computer system, which is being replaced and in a state of flux on how they would do redistricting. But our lists come from the local system currently, and we can make the changes in that put everybody in the right district. It may be a little longer before you can look yourself up on the state system to see what your local district is, but people aren't going to really do that until it gets very close to a primary or the general election. Anyway, we can work with the candidates at the parties and make sure they know which districts people are in, resolve any of those controversies, because they'll ask us. They won't bother to rely on the state system that hasn't been fixed yet.
So,
what
I
you're
guess the
telling me is,
long-winded way,
nothing's.
yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I think what Stuart's telling us is nothing's going to change between now and January 6th.
So this is what I would say. If the proposed changes that are attached to this agenda is something that Stuart and Diana are okay with, and that they don't foresee any changes between now and on that document, any real changes, then we could move it to a public hearing on January 21, therefore bypassing it. My concern was if there's going to be more changes between now and then, I would want the special meeting. That's my only concern.
I wouldn't see anything more than trivial changes. You might want to think about whether it should be a semicolon rather than a comma before events and things like that. But
if it's as minimal as that, if that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about, if that's
exactly.
the level of triviality, then I'm okay with just having the public hearing on January 21, and I can put it in the paper sooner, and we can avoid the special meeting and not waste another night of everyone's time.
Vince,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
What motion
'Cause
would
you
you
don't-
like to make, Mr. Goldstein?
I will make a motion to take this section 932 to public hearing on January 21st.
Right.
All in
That's the only
favor?
time you get to use thence in a sentence, so we're just gonna let it fly.
All in favor? Johan, I need, okay, great. So
Right.
the four of us are here. That's unanimous. We've moved it to a public hearing for January
Great.
25th.
Thank you again to Stuart and
Thank you,
Diana for all
Stuart and
their hard work
Diana.
on this.
Great, and thank you, everybody, for saving everybody an extra night in January where we don't have to meet. And I'll entertain a final motion to adjourn, if anybody would like to make that motion. And thank you. Motion to adjourn, all in favor. Good.
Good night,
We're all
everyone.
in-
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas, happy
Thank you,
holidays,
everybody.
happy
Night,
New Year to
everyone.
everybody.
Thank
Everybody have a
you.
great holiday
Thank
season.
you all.
We'll see
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
In 2025.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
I thank you.